place that made nerd cool.
The most popular password in the United States is password 123.
Those are some of my previous passwords.
Who on earth would actually fall for that?
Sensitive information has been sort of given to the wrong hands.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Security Repo Podcast. We have a great episode here planned today, and it's an episode that's a little bit different. Today we're going to be looking at security from a vendor's point of view and looking at product-led growth. What is product-led growth, or PLG? Well, this is one of the many questions I get to ask Ross Haleliuk, who's an expert in this field. And we're going to be looking at it specifically from security vendors' point of view, with the idea that it will help us understand and evaluate the products that we're looking at as security professionals, and also help us to understand a little bit behind what is going on. So without further ado, I will invite Ross to introduce himself and start the episode.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm Ross. As you've said, I'm currently a head of product at Lima Charlie. So at Lima Charlie, we build tools for technical cybersecurity professionals, security architects, security engineers, and other security people who know what to do and who want to get a full control of their security posture. We are like an integrated security platform, and the platform itself gives security teams full control and visibility over their posture. Before joining Lima Charlie, I've led product in a number of different industries. I was in e-commerce, I was in retail, wholesale, fintech, operations, in both B2B and B2C. I find myself focused primarily on the B2B, but my experience is broader and a bit outside of cybersecurity itself.
You've got a lot of articles out there. You're I would definitely call you an expert in this field, but to go into product-led growth, I mean, I have an idea about what that is. I've heard it. I've probably even used the term. But in your opinion, what is product-led growth?
Yeah, it's such a great question, especially because I don't really think there is a right answer. I'm sure if you were to ask this question of 10 people, you would get 11 different answers. So definitely, product-led growth. The way I think about the product-led growth is I think it's a mindset. And it's a go-to-market strategy which treats product as a main vehicle for growth. So like for company growth and for business growth. So historically, companies achieved their growth by expanding their sales teams, by going the so-called sales-led path, where they would try to arrange a demo, get a formal proof of concept going, negotiate a large multi-year contract, sign the contract, and then close the deal. So in the past decade, we started to see that the ways people buy product has changed. Not all purchases are top-down. We see more and more individual contributors across the enterprise starting to gain voice and starting to gain the power to find, to evaluate, to recommend different technical solutions that their company can implement. Like, here is the way I think about it. Having been used to creating an account for, say, a food delivery app in about 2 to 3 minutes, placing an order and having the food delivered at the front door within about 10 or 15 minutes, people have started to look for, like, people have changed their expectations when it comes to buying tooling for work as well. If it takes you about half an hour from the moment you've learned about the food delivery app to the moment you have a lunch at your table, it doesn't feel okay if you need to take like 3.5 months going through the mandatory sales demos before you even gain access to the product you're evaluating. So, like, more and more people want to get started without having to talk to a salesperson, without having to meet mandatory spend requirements, without having to negotiate contracts, and so on. So users want to see want to see the technical documentation, the pricing, and all the other stuff up front. And so it's all the changes in the buying behavior that are accelerating the product-led growth approach. It's not like it is at this point, PLG is becoming a bit of a buzzword, but at the same time, we have a number of small and medium sized businesses who have who are now starting to use products that they did not have access to before. And think about it this way. Well, for me, this is history. This is theoretical. But I know there are many people who still remember the times when computers were only accessible to large enterprises with the IBM and so on. And then over time, as the advances of the in personal computing have happened, now all of us have like at least two laptops probably in front of our eyes, and so the same change is happening today when companies who used to not be able to afford the enterprise tooling are now starting to buy it. And a small and medium enterprise, they don't have enough money to sign a multi-year contract. They don't want to negotiate pricing. They probably have like 10 users they need to get licenses on. And so that's another factor that is fueling the PLG. But to answer your original question, product-led growth is a mindset. And it's this mindset that we are seeing now starting to catch on, including in industries like cybersecurity. And it's also the mindset that we will be seeing more and more across other industries as we go along.
That was a really interesting breakdown. I like the way that you think of it as a mindset, because so many of these acronyms we throw around and we kind of understand what they mean, but what is it really be? What is it like tangibly? And that it's a mindset for companies to adopt. That makes sense to me. But as part of this, going through this, you're talking about the decision making process and kind of the different stakeholders in the people using the products and enterprise products. Is it that we're finding that we have more people with their hands on the products now? Is that something that we're growing into? It's not something I've really thought about, but I guess we have more people using kind of different areas and products. Is that something that you've kind of found through this process, that where the reach is extended, therefore that the product stakeholders have changed, and ultimately I guess the decision makers have changed in the purchasing process?
There are definitely a number of factors. I think one which is definitely quite strong is that people see, there was a time when decisions in companies would have been made from the top down, and so the leadership team decides that, hey, this is the tool we are going to use, or this is the business strategy we're going to pursue. And that gets cascaded to the bottom, where people just have to execute and move the company forward. When you think about the tech industry in general, you realize that the mindset and the way companies embrace their strategies, the way companies execute on their strategies, and the way companies come up with the strategies have changed in general. Now, more and more individual contributors like you and I and people at different levels in the company get the ability to recommend solutions, get the ability to bring their own ideas and their own opinions to the table, and have those ideas aggregated, discussed, and ultimately used to shape the direction in which the company is going to go. And in the same way, as we started to use more and more of those bottom-up approaches to our work in general, in the same way, we are starting to use more and more bottom-up approaches when it comes to the selection of the software the company is going to use. So there was a time when a CTO or the head of technology, let's use it more abstractly, would say, hey, this is the tool we are going to use. I went to like 3 different demos. I sat in the company's headquarters. We've signed the contract. This is what's happening. While now, like a marketer in charge of like email campaigns would be doing their own research, talking to their peers and saying, hey, what are you using to solve this problem? What works well? What doesn't? And so armed with that knowledge, they would also do their own research. They would do their own quote unquote POC. They would check how the product works, if it solves their problem. And if it does, they would come to their management and say, hey, we need this tool, and here is why. In the same way, People in cybersecurity, as an example, the industry we are talking about, like there was a time when all the decisions would have been made without any consideration of the ideas and perspectives that individual contributors bring to the table. Now it has started to change. The cybersecurity in general, it does have its own nuances because, again, the decision is still made at the top. It's a very high impact business decision. You can't simply find a cool tool and plug it into your company's network. That is not reasonable, and obviously it's a very high risk decision. Having said that, more and more individual contributors in the industry are becoming empowered to go out to look at what's possible, to do to set up their own home labs, to test it out in their own home labs, and then to come back to their management and say, hey, here is this product. I've tried it. Here is how it works. Here are the pros and cons. How about we consider it as we are looking to do something like this in our enterprise?
And you can really see that, and security is a little bit nuanced in that we still have an older way of kind of going through the buying process, not because the industry is dragging behind, but because there's kind of, as you've mentioned, certain higher risks in there. But when you think about it, the security, we're kind of breaking down the silos a little bit in security. Like we talk about DevSecOps and shifting left. So now, well, actually, more people are starting to touch the security tools at least a little bit. In the case of GitGuardian, we build enterprise secrets detection for large organizations, but individual developers may be the ones that first find out about our product, because they've leaked something online or whatnot. But let's dive a little bit into just the security side of this, because product-led growth is probably not something that the security industry is really thinking about, and security vendors are really thinking about. So why is it something that kind of vendors in security, organizations in security should be thinking about product-led growth? What is it about security now that's kind of changing, and why is it kind of a ripe industry to start thinking about this?
Basically, there are a number of reasons for this. One that comes to mind is that going the traditional path and selling cybersecurity tools to CISOs has just become too expensive. Like it is, in fact, for smaller startups, it is prohibitively expensive. And as the market is getting more and more crowded, CISOs and the security leaders are overloaded with the number of tools and vendors and startups trying to get their foot off their door, trying to quote unquote book a quick demo. And so it's becoming harder and harder to arrange those demos. It's becoming harder and harder to differentiate it. But even if the demo does happen, it's rare that the people in that call can see some real results, can understand what the company does really well, how it is different from all the other 125 vendors in that space. So it's genuinely just too expensive to get in front of the decision makers, and that's one of the reasons. So more and more companies are trying to look for new ways to get their foot in the door, and product-led growth is one of those ways. If you can get an individual contributor, if you can get a security professional who is doing the research into the new tooling on the market at their free time, or maybe as a part of their assignment at work, if you can get them discover the product, get started without having to go through a number of artificially created hoops and blockers, if you can get them right into the product, see if they can see what the product does, if they can evaluate if it could be a good fit, they themselves can then become an internal champion, bringing the product internally to their leadership team. So instead of now being one of the vendors trying to reach the CISO or the head of security or the head of engineering for a demo using the traditional sales approach, you can get the product into the hands of people who have the trust of that security leader internally. You can have those people become your internal champion and really like push for the adoption of that product. So there is there are a number of advantages associated when it comes to getting the tool into the hands of the end user, into the hands of the practitioner. The other factor, which we've touched on briefly before, is the fact that technical people are gaining more and more power and more and more ability to recommend solutions internally. So it's becoming very common for them to play with the product in their home lab and then bring it to their leadership team. And last but not least is definitely the focus on the small and medium enterprises. So historically, it's just the large companies that had access and had the need for security tooling, or at least that was the perception. Like many of the mom and pop shops were not really looking for anything to secure their operations. While now, rising insurance premiums, the rise in ransomware, tightening government regulations, which we are seeing every single day, and also the requirements from their vendors and partners are pushing SMB market to start adopting cybersecurity tooling. And when you think about SMB, you think about somebody who probably has like 5 to 10, maybe 25, maybe 100 employees. You think about somebody who quite often really uses free versions of the tooling out there. Like many of them use free tier of Slack, many of them use free tier of other products, just because, they don't have a whole lot of money to spend. They don't have a lot of time to look for resellers who could satisfy their needs. So they're often just kind of trying to find what works and being scrappy and being creative about solving their problems. And so SMBs don't have, they're not used to the long sales cycle. They don't have a legal or a contract person on the team to negotiate a good contract. And in fact, even from the vendor standpoint, you don't want to negotiate contracts for 5 or 10 licenses with an SMB. That is just not what will make you profitable. It's too expensive. It's prohibitively expensive. And so there is companies looking to get into the SMB market benefit a lot by having transparent pricing, having a self-serve model, and having an easy way for an SMB people to get started and to get on board and to start paying without having to talk to sales teams and go through large sales processes.
You can really see how that comes into place with the small medium businesses when you talked about the delivery app way back at the start, where you can spend and half an hour after discovering food's at your door. If you want to set up, the internal messaging system, it takes, an hour. You may look at Slack, maybe you look at Mattermost, and then you get it set up. And then your email client, your cloud host, whatever it is, all of these things you could do quickly. And then, security is going to take 6 months. It doesn't work. But it is interesting in what you say, because, some people might hear this and say, well, SMBs, as you said, trying to negotiate a deal for 10 seats isn't worth it anyway. So where's the value in going down this product-led growth? If we're targeting large enterprises, what is the value, in your opinion, of making your product accessible to the small medium businesses, when they're not going to be what's going to change your balance sheet? What's the argument for providing value into that area in security?
What comes to mind is that when I think about PLG, it's not just about SMBs. I'm bringing up SMBs as an example simply because that is the market that has been growing. In the past, large enterprises were buying cybersecurity tools 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. SMBs weren't. Now we have a large influx of small and medium enterprises looking for security because that's something they didn't have to worry about before, and now they do. So it's essentially a newly created market, and that's why PLG definitely makes sense for that category. But when I think about the enterprises, product-led growth can make a huge difference in enterprise sales as well. As I've mentioned, getting an internal champion help speed up the sales process is incredibly useful. On the other hand, what is also very helpful in enterprise sales is shortcutting the time it takes for the proof of concept, for the POC to complete. And when your product can be accessed and deployed and onboarded even before the business conversation starts, that can shorten the time dramatically. And obviously, if you make your documentation easily accessible, if you make the product easy to use, if it's easy for people to understand, if it's quick and easy for people to understand what the product does, how it works, then you also don't need to spend as much resources and time of customer support teams on all of the hand-holding and getting the enterprise customer through the initial POC stage, or even through their onboarding once they do decide to come up to speed. So it's in many ways, product-led growth is very much complementary to the traditional sales-led growth. It is by no means, I'm not suggesting that PLG is going to absolutely replace the need for sales teams. Those two approaches, they work together, and when companies embrace PLG as a mindset, they start thinking about a lot of the decisions they make and a lot of the decisions they have to make when they're designing their enterprises. They start thinking about it from a different perspective. They start putting the product into the center of the equation, and from there, they start evaluating, okay, what is needed for this customer to adopt the product? What is needed for them to start paying? And things like customer success, things like sales engineering, like pre-sales, post-sales, marketing, they become a part of this like picture with the product in this and the user experience in the center of the picture, as opposed to just a large number of departments trying to each go in their own direction and take the priorities that they believe are important and pursue those.
Yeah, I really think you nailed it in there, because you're adding value to so many different stakeholders. You're adding value to the teams that can just come ahead and use the product. You're not wasting sales resources with smaller deals. You're adding value to the security teams that can now become those internal champions and illustrate, the benefits of your product. You're adding value to the sales teams that you have, because you're reducing their sales length, because you're not replacing them, but you're helping them do a lot of their job. And then all the way up to the top, you're adding value to the CISO, who now can come in later in the conversation, or whoever's the manager or whoever has the purchasing power, come in later of the conversation when all of these questions have been answered, because everyone's been able to review the documentation, try out the product in their home lab, connect it up to, if it's insignificant data, do a test, do a proof of concept.
The reason it is so important and can be such a big game changer in cybersecurity in particular is because the vendor market is so incredibly crowded that if your company is claiming to do X, there is at least 10 to 100 other companies in the space that are claiming to do the exact same thing. And in many ways, those vendors would be all similar. Sometimes they differ, but I personally believe that the best way to give the customer the ability to evaluate the product is to just give them the keys and say, hey, go and check it out for yourself. Like, no, you don't have to. Like, you don't have to talk to a marketing team. You don't have to talk to the sales team. You don't have to talk to people who don't use the product themselves. All you really need is create, here's an account. Go and give it a try. Get your data into the product, see how it works. And once you have invested so much time and so much effort trying it out, it's much more likely that your team will become familiar with the product. They will develop this sense of familiarity, this sense that, hey, this can actually solve our problem. And now the vendor that is taking the PLG approach is a few steps ahead of the other vendors with whom this potential buyer has just had a bunch of sales calls and never actually seen what the product does.
You can just imagine it now. If your product is a closed box and you're trying to evaluate different things, and you can use one product, you can feel it, even if it's not in your immediate pipelines or data or infrastructure, then you have such an advantage of that. One of the things one of the things I loved about when I started working for GitGuardian is that we were building software for large enterprises, but were really focused on individual developers. How GitGuardian was able to kind of break through as a very early company is we started scanning vulnerabilities on GitHub in public code and then alerting people if they had like leaked secrets in their code. And we did all this for free. And that enabled us to kind of go from the developers that leaked a corporate key that had to have a conversation with their manager and then told them how they found it. And all of a sudden we were talking to these large companies. It's kind of counterintuitive. And what you've been adding to is kind of like the different levels that you could achieve on top of that. I think it's really important for organizations to be able to stand out from the crowd. I have one kind of last kind of technical question in this, and we've talked about a lot of it, so I think it's probably maybe just reiterating some of this. But we mentioned at the start that product-led growth is a mindset, but in security, if you're a vendor and you're wanting to embrace product-led growth, what are core steps? Is there kind of some tick boxes that don't encompass everything, but that you should be aiming for? For example, having that free tier, having open documentation. What is it that organizations can actually start to look at implementing things that's going to help them get into that mindset and on that path of product-led growth?
That is a fantastic question, and I think my answer is going to be very different from what you expect. I genuinely believe that the number one step is to develop a solid, deep level understanding of their customers. Essentially, look at the ideal customer profile. Evaluate who is it that the company is trying to target, and understand their goals, understand their pain points, understand their use cases, understand how they find the product, what terms they use to search for it. How do they get started with the product? Which parts are hard? Which parts are easy? And it's this knowledge that the product team can then leverage to design products that are intuitive, easy to use, and ideally that can also have the growth loops built into them, where people are encouraged to share the product with other practitioners, where people are encouraged to recommend it to their counterparts, and so on and so forth. But after you develop this understanding of your customer base, have a look at making it easy to get started with the product, to reduce any ambiguity associated with the onboarding. Maybe there is a case for making the documentation public. Maybe there is a case for making pricing public. Again, many of those answers are going to very much depend on your customer and what you know about them. For example, if you are going to, if your target is mainly enterprise, then there are many reasons to not have a fully transparent pricing, simply because you know that the enterprise is always going to look for ways to negotiate. And so by having a free tier for the personal use, and let's just say a transparent tier for the SMB market, and a contact us page for the larger enterprise, you can potentially solve that problem. But again, it all starts with the understanding of the customer, with the understanding how do people buy in your market. Like, are you selling to an engineering leadership or security leadership? Or maybe the product you are selling is targeting the problem that doesn't even have a well-defined owner today. Like, for example, when it comes to code security, sometimes the buyer is a head of engineering, a head of development. At other cases, it's the security team that is tasked with protecting the code security. Again, like, you have to understand your market. The other things that the companies can do are making it easy to realize the value of the product, or how we often call it, make it easy to achieve the so-called aha moment. Essentially, make it easy for the customer to complete the steps they need to complete for the product to become useful, for the product to become functional. Like, for example, deploying it on the endpoints, deploying it on their network, like getting their data into the product. Like, make it easy, make it painless. Make it easy to progressively learn about the new functionality the product offers without just throwing it all at a new user from the moment when they sign up. So make support easily accessible in a manner that people can have their questions answered maybe in a self-serve manner. So it can sound like PLG is just a laundry list of requirements and ideas, but in reality, I see product-led growth as a path. I see it as a path that the company pursues, not as a final destination. And so the journey, the product-led growth as a journey, starts with the understanding of the customers and the exact steps of what to do from there, like whether we want to do a freemium or a free trial, whether we want to do a fully open pricing or a somewhat open pricing. Like, the answers to all of those questions will come as a result of discussions informed and armed with the understanding of the customer.
Well, Ross, I'm conscious of time, so we're coming to the end of it. But if people want to kind of learn more about this or follow you, what's the best ways that people can kind of can connect with you on different platforms? Where can they kind of keep track?
Yeah, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I'm going to ask you to share the link to my LinkedIn, maybe in the description of the podcast.
Yeah. There's going to be links to your LinkedIn. There's going to be links to your articles. Any other links you want, links galore.
Oh, just LinkedIn and the blog. I have a blog. It's called Venture in Security, and that's where I try to look at cybersecurity from the business standpoint and from the market, business, go-to-market standpoint, product standpoint, venture capital standpoint. So looking at some of those broader questions in the industry.
Yeah, and I can really recommend checking out that blog. There's some great articles. There's 3 or 4 articles on product-led growth, but there's also a lot else in there too. So really recommend everyone checking out that blog. The links will be in the description wherever you're listening to this. So Ross, I want to take one last opportunity just to thank you for sharing your knowledge. It's a topic that you're clearly passionate about, and I really enjoyed learning a lot more about it. So thanks so much for sharing this time with us.